Hello, good morning from where I am, and good afternoon, depending on where you are, right? Whether it's morning or afternoon. Welcome to the Amma Manson Network, and also welcome to those joining me on my YouTube channel, Commodacity. If you have not yet subscribed to Commodacity, just go on over to YouTube, show our sisters some love, click that subscribe button. So this morning, we are discussing a topic that is a very sensitive topic, and we're talking about the light-skinned black militant. The light-skinned black militant, of which I consider myself to be one. Who is a light-skinned black militant, and why do I have this in quotation as a curse? Now, clearly, if I'm telling you that I myself am a light-skinned black militant, and I certainly don't consider myself to be cursed or to be a curse on anyone or anything, but in some circles, it's almost as if this is a curse, and we're going to talk about why this is so, why it is perceived to be so. I can speak for myself. I don't claim to speak on behalf of any group, but from my experience and from the experience that I have observed, right? I am from Jamaica, so I'm a Caribbean black woman, and our experience in the Caribbean has been such that, most of our ancestors were from the African continent. We have heavy dose of melanin in our system, but it just so happened that because of the history of the region, with slavery and colonialism and indentureship, we are really a melting pot. We have been a melting pot. As a matter of fact, our motto here in Jamaica is out of many, one people. Out of many, one people. It's a lot of different flavors going into the mix, right? And the reality of the situation is that biology being what it is, some of us have come out to be of a lighter complexion than others of our race. But the fact of the matter is, we are of the same race. There are different levels that you can look at it at, right? So there is a personal level, who you think you are, who you feel you are inside, who your allegiance belongs to on a personal level, on a spiritual level, right? But we don't live in a vacuum, so you also have to consider it on the social level. Who are you perceived to be? Who do others, what box do others put you in when they look at you? And like it or not, that is important. It's very important. If an antelope thinks himself to be a lion, doesn't have any doubt in his mind that he's a lion, and he wants to go parading as a lion, going to places where lions hang out, doing lion things. Tell me, whose perception is more important? Is it the antelope's perception of himself as a lion, or is it the lion's perception of the antelope as an antelope? When he goes parading among lions, he's going to be seen as an antelope because that's what the lion determines he is, and the lion is going to act on that determination. regardless of what the antelope perceives. So both things are important, right? And if you consider yourself as being given a choice, if you find yourself in the position where you're being told you can choose, you can pass for this, you could pass for that, it's up to you, and you feel like you have a choice, which one would you choose? Would you choose the one that is associated with civilized behavior, the originators of civilization? Or would you choose the one that is associated with uncivilized behavior, plundering, theft, discrimination? If you feel like you have a choice, why choose the one that is associated with negativity, right? But my opinion is that in the social context, you also have to consider how others perceive you. So it has to do with how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. For a lot of us here in the Caribbean, colorism is very strong, and we're pitted against each other. The lighter complexion persons, growing up, you are told you have a privilege. You're lucky. You have good hair. You have high complexion, and you're made to feel like it is a privilege. And some of the lighter complexioned persons will actually look down on the darker skinned ones. However, when these people go abroad, let's say they go to the United States, they go to Europe, they find that this so-called privilege no longer exists. They are treated just like any other Black person, and they are conscious of this. They know this. It's only when they come now among the darker complexioned Blacks that they can flaunt this so-called highness, right? But they know when they go amongst the persons to whom it doesn't make a difference to them, then they understand and they act accordingly, right? So back in the day here in Jamaica, certain jobs, especially those jobs that would put you at the forefront, right? You're the ones who customers would meet, like a bank clerk, persons in the clerical staff in certain big businesses and so on. These persons were of lighter complexion. The darker complexion Jamaicans could not hope of getting these jobs, right? And so in Jamaica here, we have a thing called the browning, right? The browning, the lighter complexion, whether male or female, you are made to believe that you are the thing, right? Just by virtue of having a lighter complexion. For those of us like myself who may be of a lighter complexion but have no issue, we have never had any doubt. I know for me, there has never once been any doubt in my mind that I'm a Black woman. From I was a Black child coming straight up, there has never been any doubt. The doubt and the controversy was always coming from the outside. It was always somebody else telling me, why are you calling yourself Black? You're not Black. The people have been telling me that from I was a child coming up, right? Why are you saying you're Black? For us, for people like me who love and embrace our African ancestry, love and embrace our African culture, our history, our people, when you say things like that, to someone like me, that is like adding insult to injury. It's like a double dose of poison to us, right? Because yes, our ancestors went through hell, and we need to understand that slavery is not where our people started. Africans did not, slavery is nowhere near the beginning of African history. But we did go through it, and it was hell. It was hell. But for those of us who came out looking the way I look, it's a double dose of poison, because for us, we feel like we were wronged in terms of the brutality, but as well as having been deprived of the melanated skin, which to us is something wonderful and powerful. So it's like you're rubbing salt in the wound when you're trying to deprive us of that claim to the motherland, and trying to say we have no right to even make that claim. No, we need to understand that biologically speaking, there are different factors that go into our presentation as individuals, right? So there's the genotype, there's the phenotype. The genotype has to do with your genetics on the cellular level. You got this gene from your mom, that gene from your dad, and the unique combination and how those genes work together, right? But on the outside, the physical display might be, it blows your mind, how the genes can combine to give that physical presentation. So you can have siblings, same mom, same dad, and one come out much, much lighter than the other, right? I have known persons who their one parent was white, one was black, and this person comes out really, really dark. I've known others with the same situation, and they came out really, really light skin. So that's the phenotype, the physical presentation. In the Caribbean, it is just a vast array of presentations because of the history that we have gone through. However, genetically, how dare you try to deny someone who is clearly genetically African? You're coming, and there's no doubt in their mind, there's no doubt in their spirit who they are, and trying to come and attacking, trying to suggest that they have no right to say certain things or to be certain places. I remember as a young girl, I was following a friend of mine. I followed a friend of mine to a meeting that he was having with some of his brethren, right? So these were all men, and I was in probably sixth form, and I accompanied him, and they were talking. These were Rastafarian men, and they were talking about Garvey, and I knew myself. I was always a Black conscious, African centered, and African conscious young woman. And so I was joining the conversation, and we're talking about Garvey. And these men were telling me, these were all dark skinned men. These men were telling me, how dare you talk about Garvey? Because if Marcus Garvey was here, he would not even allow you in his organization. He would not want to hear what you were saying. And I was I was standing my ground, against these men. That's just how I've always been, very outspoken, and I stand my ground. And I was saying, how dare you try to tell me that Marcus Garvey would most certainly embrace me, because Marcus Garvey was no fool, and Marcus Garvey would not entertain the division of blacks on the grounds of their complexion, right? So, like I said, it's a very strong, this colorism and the browning phenomena in Jamaica is very, very strong. I remember in the 90s, Buju Banton, a Jamaican singer, Buju Banton, a dark-skinned Rastafarian man. So he did this song about the browning, right? So like I said, the browning is the light-skinned, mainly the female, even though males and females are called browning, but it's mainly the females, right? And these women have been conditioned to believe that they are privileged and just by virtue of their complexion, they are the catch, right? So Buju came out as this Rasta man, this dark skinned Rasta man, and he was singing about the browning, right? Me love me car, me love me bike, me love me money and thing. But most of all, me love me browning. And everybody come out and they were real. I remember it was a real big. They were bashing Buju. Say, Buju, how you do that? How you come out and sing about browning? You as a dark skin Rasta man is supposed to be uplifting the dark skinned woman, right? You come out and sing, well, me love me car, me love my bike. And most of all, me love my browning. And it was such a backlash that Buju had to run with all his might and go do another song, right? So he had to go and do another song about me not stop cry for all black woman. Nothing's up one for no complexion. So Buju had to wheel and come again because the backlash was so great. There is a great division, right? Okay, so somebody's saying he was not a Rasta at the time, but he was, I don't recall. I think this was in the 90s, right? I don't recall if he was, but I know that he was seen as this really dark skinned man singing about the browning, and he got a lot of backlash for it, right? And so he had to wheel and come again. He had to wheel and come again and do the song for the dark skinned woman, right? Stop cry for all black women. Did it appease them? Who knows, right? It was some mopping up. It was some mopping up that Buju had to do. Now we also have this thing about the bleaching, right? Very rampant, especially now. We have bleaching, and this is a phenomenon in Jamaica. I know it's widespread in other places as well, but it is really a phenomenon in Jamaica, where especially among the younger generation, the late teens, early 20s, 30s, but now even some of the older folks I see bleaching their skin because they are so ashamed of their dark complexion, which to me is so beautiful, so rich, and so lovely. And these people it's sacrilegious. When I look at it, it's sacrilegious, right? They are applying these creams and different chemicals to try to remove the melanin. And the melanin is fighting back with all its might. But that struggle now, as a result of that struggle, they get blotches and the skin just loses its composure, and after a while, they just look like crap. But to them, it is worth even that momentary appearance of having a lighter complexion, right? Even when you are among, let's say you're among a group of persons who are black conscious, right? And you can have rifts. So, for example, if the darker skinned men or one and two of the darker skinned men approach you, want you to be their woman, his woman, right? It can cause strife between the darker skinned women. They're going to be say, oh, so he prefers you, right? So even he as a black conscious man, a dark skinned man, in a group of militant blacks. It's like you as a light-skinned woman, you're up against, there's this constant tension that you can't even get a mate, because in this mate approaching you, he's seen as practicing colorism just from being with you, right? So the tension is there. I know for me, like I said, there has never ever in my mind been any doubt of who I am. But I can tell you though that among persons like myself who are very militant and very pro-black, I've noticed a kind of trend. Is like we go through certain similar stages, right? Where it's like you're overcompensating, for want of a better word. You're overcompensating because you were deprived the melanin, you were deprived, that deep textured hair, which I love. And so it's like you're overcompensating by doing certain things. And I'm going to show you some pics that tell the stages that I went through. It's like you want the phenotype to be as close to that of the motherland as you can possibly make it. It's like the reverse of what the bleachers are trying to do, right? So you will see me. I'm going to show you some pics where you're going to see me. I was in my dashiki. I went through a stage, right? So I went through a stage of shaving my hair first. And so it's like, because I was always told, you have pretty hair, you have good hair, and people were, as a child. Let me get up the I have a little slideshow. I'm going to show you what I mean. Hopefully I'm able to share it. Okay, so as a child, I was told that, this is what I looked like as a child. So we in Jamaica, we call this pretty hair, right? And when I went to school, everyone was in my hair. I couldn't get them out of my hair. They would plait it, they would rub their hand through it, because my hair was long and soft, right? They used to call me Miss Chin. That was my name for much of my childhood. And so when I was approaching, when I became a young woman, one of the first things I did was this: I shaved all of that hair off. And you can see this is the top of my dashiki. So I would sew my own clothes. I would get my African print, and you'd see me. This is in the 90s, right? And I'd be walking around in my flowing dashiki garments, walking through the streets of Kingston, with my bald head and my flowing dashiki garments. Still getting the comments, however, Browning and Miss Chin, and they would call me Indian, they would call me Chinese, they would call me everything except what I was, which was a black woman. They wanted me, it's almost as if they wanted me to be insecure. They didn't want me to be a strong black woman declaring my blackness. This is so this is me again. I had grown locks for a number of years, and then I cut the locks off because for spiritual reasons, right? And I think for women, whenever you see a woman cut her hair off, in my opinion, she's going through some deep spiritual experiences. A woman who cuts her hair is onto something. And sometimes a lot of emotions are tied up in your hair. And when you go to another stage in your development, you tend to want to shed that to start over. So this is me with my black power fist and my afro, which isn't quite behaving the way the afro should because you know there's a lot of there are a lot of things mixed up in it, so it's not really doing what the afro should, but it's doing its thing, right? You can't make this out, but this is the on this t-shirt is a picture of an Egyptian pharaoh. I think it's Tutankhamun, right? So I'm in my Egyptian t-shirt with my black power fist up. So that's my afro as it gets. And this is me with my locks as it's pretty much as it looks now, right? That's pretty much as my locks are right now. So I've been through the stages. I've been through the stages. The bald head, the afro, the locks. And for me, it wasn't, it was more like for persons to know this is me, this is who I am, this is who I want you to see me as, because there is no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind who I am. But I noticed though that a lot of militant, light-skinned blacks, I've noticed that they tend to go through these stages. You know, you have either they shave their head, or you have the locks, or the change of name, or they go through a period of being Rastafarian, or thinking, because you have a strong sense of Africa. And especially for us here in Jamaica, as a young adolescent coming up, young woman, you tend to think, okay, Rasta is the path. But eventually realizing Rasta isn't the only path, it's one of the paths to Africa, right? And as a matter of fact, the dreadlocks, which is what, you know, Rastas refer to their locks as, it historically, it was a declaration of the militants of Rastafari. It was a way of appearing dreaded, appearing formidable, right? It's like the mane of the lion. It's a way of adding to the phenotype, so it's like with the lighter skin, you want to have other things that can enforce your blackness, right? So the name change. So I changed my name, and you tend also the person who you seek as a mate, as a spouse, clearly would be more melanated, because you would want for your children, you want to give your children, get some heavy dose of melanin, almost like it's almost as if you want to regain equilibrium, right? You want to, because you were deprived of that, you want to ensure that your children, you want to line them up with some strong melanin to ensure that they get what they deserve, right? So it has always baffled me why other persons would be so insistent on me losing that strength and losing that security that I had. If you feel the person has a choice, which in my mind we don't, but if you feel the person has a choice, why would you insist that they choose the lesser of the two, right? some persons who are of lighter complexion, they are actually very confused. It's like they are in a state of limbo, especially growing up in the Caribbean, where you have we're in the backyard of the United States, and so with television and even now with social media, even worse, right? So growing up, you were given white dolls to play with. There are all these Disney princesses who were white, the Hollywood stars who were white, and so you are bombarded with all of this negativity, right? That is what those are the factors that have led to the bleaching and the idolization of whiteness in the minds of Black children and Black adolescents and Black adults. So now you see persons who their faces are white, and if they hold up their hand against their face, it's like two different, you can't believe it's the same person. The self-hatred is so strong in a lot of our brothers and sisters. The self-hatred is so strong. So you'll have some artists, trying to, like I said, get back that equilibrium, and you'll have a lot of self-affirming songs from our more conscious artists, also trying to reduce that tension between the lighter skinned and the darker skinned persons. Because remember, we are of the same race, we're all Black. The division has been perpetrated by the colonizers from the days when you had the field slaves and the house slaves, right? And the lighter skinned ones would get the so called privilege of being in the house, being out of the sun. And that has come down through the centuries. But we need to put a stop to it, right? We need to understand that we are all Africans. We're all Africans. And listen, I'm not one of those persons who will pretend that there is no difference. There is a physical difference. The phenotype is different, and we understand it. I'm a realist. We understand the reason for it. But in understanding the reason for it, you don't go around blaming the victims, and you don't go around trying to re-victimize the victims and trying to drive confusion and insecurity in the heart of people who were victimized, right? If you have your brothers and sisters who are conscious of themselves, who know who they are and are declaring their Blackness, why would you want to get them to start doubting themselves, right? Why would you want to be the one to be telling them, don't say you're Black, say you're something else? Why would you do that? There are, when you think of the Black Power movement, when you think of Black historians, some of them of lighter complexion, who have done so much in terms of, and sometimes they did this with their own resources, going into Africa, doing their own research, doing their own unearthing of our history and bringing it to us. When you think of how many of our Black light-skinned brothers and sisters who have put themselves on the front line. And I made a short list, and I want to mention some of these brothers and sisters who may have been of a lighter complexion, but they had no doubt in their mind. Just as I have no doubt in my mind who I am, they had no doubt in their mind who they are and the cause that they dedicated their lives to. So I want to say power. I want to call the names, these names, and say power to, first and foremost, my beloved Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X, who was called Red's Big Red because he was of a lighter complexion. But Malcolm was such a militant, firm man, a man of integrity, a man who went through the dungeon, a man who came from the dregs of society, a man who was involved in his early years in crime, in the underbelly of society, but who raised himself and was raised by others to the point where now he came out and he was a stalwart in terms of fatherhood, in terms of nation building, right? Malcolm X, very powerful. Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Senator Adam Clayton Powell Jr., a very light-skinned man, very outspoken, very militant, right? In terms of the liberation of Blacks and making sure that Blacks were represented in politics in the United States. Angela Davis, several of the Black Panthers were light-skinned and very militant, very brave. Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, very powerful organization. Elijah Muhammad is a light-skinned, or was a light-skinned Black man, leader of the very powerful Nation of Islam. My favorite poet, Hakim Madhubuti, a man whom I don't know much of his personal life, but in terms of his artwork, his poetry, very idealistic in terms of Black liberation and upliftment. Another poet, Nikki Giovanni, most active in the 70s. Yeah, these guys were most active in the 70s. I'm an old school person, right? So you'll hear me calling a lot of persons who are from back in the day. But yeah, I also want to mention Bob Marley. Bob Marley, who through his song, through his music, he touched millions of people from all over the world with his songs. Bob Marley was the product of a white man and a Black woman. He was a product of that union, and a very conscious Black man, secure in himself. Even for those Rastafarians, and this is the thing, like I told you, when I was young and I went to these men who were all Rastafarians, and I remember saying to them, the very man who you're referring to as God, and I was talking about Emperor Haile Selassie. He's of a light complexion, right? For some Rastafarians, because I went through a stage of exploring Rastafari, and I used to interview Rastafarians all over the place. And one of the things I realized is that there is very little consensus when it comes to some things, right? So as it relates to Haile Selassie and whether he's God or whether he's not God or whether he's whatever. There is differences of opinion. But for a lot of Rastafarians, Haile Selassie is God on earth. He was not a dark-skinned man. So I'm saying to these Rastafarian men, how are you telling me? Does it even make sense that you're telling me I, as a light-skinned girl at the time, I don't have a right to be so militant. I don't have a right to say that I'm black. And then the man who you're saying is God or God on earth is pretty much the same complexion that I have. It does not make sense, right? It doesn't make sense to me. So these are the kinds of things that, trying to cause derision among your people, that doesn't make sense. Trying to get someone who is confident to become insecure in themselves, that doesn't make sense. It is counterproductive. It is counterintuitive. It is counterintuitive. There's a thing that I can speak of Jamaica because this is where I am, this is where I'm from. But I assume it would be the same elsewhere or similar elsewhere. So the division that is caused between women in the black race, lighter complexion women and darker complexion women. So it's like, as a light-skinned black woman, you are told, okay, you are the prize, you are the catch, you are the wifey material, you are the upfront material, you're the one who he will wear on his arm, he will introduce to the important people. And the darker one, no, she can be the side chick, she can be the one, in Jamaica we have a saying, the one who give you the wickedest slam. Yeah, go to the dark one for that. Go to the dark one for the freaky stuff. Go to the dark one to get your proper sort out. But she's not going to be the one who you're going to wear on your arm. And this drives division and chaos amongst our people, and we need to stop. These are stereotypes. These are stereotypes. The fact of the matter is, it all boils down to who you are as a person. What you bring to the table as a person, as an individual. What you have made of yourself as an individual, and what you bring to a relationship, what you bring to a friendship, what you bring to the race. What will be your contribution? Stop trying to get people to think less of themselves, and stop trying to get persons to question their identity. There is enough out there. And like I said, if you're an antelope who thinks that you're a lion, the joke is on you. The joke is on you, because you don't exist in a bubble. You're going to go out there amongst persons who see you as something else, and their actions towards you, if they're coming at you in attack mode and you're not in defense mode because you don't see where there's any issue, you don't see yourself as being targeted, and you put yourself out there, you are going to be attacked and you will not be able to defend, because that's not where your mind is at, right? You have to understand that it's not just how you view yourself. We live in a world with other people, and these other people look at you, and some of them have the mentality, some of them are using certain criteria to judge you, and they will do things and say things accordingly, and you have to be aware of that. You can't be naive to that, right? You can't be naive to that. You have to understand the world for what it is. And my advice to you, and I'm speaking to other members of my race who are of a darker complexion, my advice to you is for your brothers and sisters who were deprived of their melanin, they're not as melanated as you, they're not as chocolatey as you, but they are confident in themselves of who they are, what they have a right to. They are confident in themselves, and some of them are militant. And by militant, I mean they are willing to. A militants, when I say militants, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to grab your weapons and take to the hills and go into guerrilla warfare, right? I remember once I was having a conversation with a Facebook friend. So she had, one of my Facebook friends had made a post about militant blacks. And I remember I had responded and I included Nikki Giovanni. She's a poet. She was very active in the 70s mainly, right? Nikki Giovanni, and I was saying she was a militant poet. And this other person responded, this other woman responded, she was arguing with me. No, I don't argue on social media. I state my case. If you agree, you agree. If you disagree, you disagree. But I'm not going to be arguing back and forth with anyone. So she saw my response and she felt like she wanted an argument. And she was saying, how dare you say that Nikki Giovanni was militant? I think I responded once or twice to her, but when I realized she was in fight mode, I simply explained to her this is not my thing. But in my first response, I was saying to her, we tend to think of militants as, yeah, I'm gonna grab my guns, we're gonna grab our guns, we're gonna take to the hills, we're gonna go into guerrilla warfare, and we're going to attack, and we're gonna run back to the hills, and it's the Cuban Revolution all over again. That's not the only, in my opinion, that's not the only definition of militant. And I was explaining to her that Nikki Giovanni, in her poetry, she was uplifting Black men and women. Likewise with Hakeem Madhubuti in his idealism. He was saying, this is what we are, this is what we can be, this is what we aspire, and we're molding and making ourselves into that. That is militant. When Nikki Giovanni talks about the love between a Black woman and a Black man, that is militance, because we live in a society that is telling us that that love should not happen, that love cannot happen. So for somebody to come out and say Black love is possible and Black love is happening and Black love should happen, that is militance. That's a militant, that's a declaration of war, right? So you shouldn't just, when I say a militant Black woman or a militant Black man, it's the Black woman or man who is declaring that the dregs that we're in now is not what we're going to stay in. We're going to climb out of that by any means necessary. And some of the means have to do with just being a better person in yourself, getting to know yourself, taking care of yourself. being gentle. One of the most militant things that a Black woman can do is to be gentle towards her Black man. One of the most militant things that a Black man can do is to be gentle towards his Black woman, to be gentle towards his brother, to be gentle towards his sons, to embrace his sons, to hug them, to pat them on the back. That's a militant thing to do. One of the most militant things you can do as a Black parent is to sit your child in your lap and read to them. That's militant. Yeah, you have to redefine some words, right? Militant is also raising your fist and saying Black power. Militant is also changing your name, as I did, reaffirming, defining, redefining who you are. When I was 18, I changed my name because for me, I wanted to reclaim what had been stolen from me. My name had been stolen from me, and I wanted to redefine myself and to reclaim it. That's a militant thing to do. My name, Kama, is not a female name. Kama is a male name. But because I was a rebel, I wanted that name because the name means the quiet warrior. And that's who I am, the quiet warrior. And I wanted that name. And even though it's a male name, I wanted it and I took it. And that's a militant thing to do. Homeschooling my kids, that's a militant thing to do because everybody was against it. Everybody was laughing at us when we decided to homeschool our children back in the 90s here in Jamaica. That was not a thing to do. We were laughed at. And now we are sought out because of the results that we have had. So you have to understand when I say militant, these are the things that I mean. Right? So I'm going to close by again saying to us as Black people, no matter your complexion, right? No matter how much, if you were at the front of the line, in Jamaica we say when you have a lot of something, in Jamaica we say, boy, you did there at the front of the line when that a give away, man. You really did there at the front of the line when them a give out that. So if you were at the front of the line when the melanin was being given out, right? When the nice thick lips were being given out, when the nice big nostrils were being given out, taking all that air. You were at the front of the line when that thick woolly hair was being given out. And some of us, for whatever reason, were at the middle of the line or the back of the line, or we never even reached yet when it was given out. We came and we got the what left, we got the dreads, but we still got some. It is not for you to try to make us insecure. We were all victims. It's just that on the genetic level, we were all victims. Some of us express in our phenotype more of the victimization, but we were all victims. Don't repeat the process. Don't repeat the crime by adding insult to injury. We are all Black people, okay? We are all Black people. Let us uplift each other. Let us encourage each other and reinforce each other and love each other so that we can all be better for it. So this is come on until next time when we have another interesting, serious, and probably very sensitive topic to discuss. I'll see you then, and remember to go on over to Audacity on YouTube. Show me some love. Subscribe to the channel on Facebook, Audacity, or you can look for Kama Mahako. Until next week, take care of yourselves.